Air-to-air. Step 1. Lure them back to your friendly neighborhood Sam or Cap and have them deal with that noise. They've got systems dedicated for finding and destroying flying things from a safe distance. If step 1 doesn't apply and you gotta, or you wanna, do it yourself, you have some tools. The Soviets envisioned some counter-helo capabilities in their attack helicopters and training, so you are equipped with the tools for that purpose. Just know you're still not high up on the air-to-air food chain. If you care for authenticity, no, Iglas were not a real thing on the Shark, they only came in later with the Ka-52 Alligator. Then again, for many, DCS is a race to violate airspace, their enemy, and procedures as quickly as possible. Which is absolutely fine. Enjoy the what if sim however you like. So these Iglas were ripped straight from the man-portable air defense system. So like the man-pad, the coolant and battery limits its seeking time. To enable the Igla pylons, have the mission slots set to the 2022 version. The 2011 and 2022 numbers just relate to ED's release of Black Shark 2 and 3 modules. See my linked video if you want to know the timelines of the real loadouts. Then rearming in the mission editor or the mission itself, equip the Iglas on those third pylons. They're called anti-air pylons, not outer pylons, which is where the Vigors normally go. Do the usual startup and have weapons power and master arm on. Same as you'd need for every other weapon. In short, to use Iglas, weapon selection, anti-air pylons, weapon release to start cooling. Once the timer appears, if the bore sight circle is near the target and in range, you'll hear a tone and the circle goes larger, at which point you can hold weapon release till it fires. Diving deeper into everything that just happened. Selecting the AA pylons automatically puts you in air-to-air mode. The Iglas don't need this. You can even turn it off if you wanted. AA does give the Vigors proximity detonation and the unguided munitions lead, should you switch to them, so you might as well leave it on. Unless you wanted to do some really crazy shooting an Igla and then focus on a ground target, maybe. You'll see this new symbology showing you have the anti-air pylon selected since it's not on the dashboard. It also says connect missile power / PS coolant supply, something like that, and lets you know the Iglas suck by being rear aspect. Every missile has 2 nitrogen tanks dedicated only to that missile, each tank giving 30 seconds of cooling. With anti-air pylon selected, when you press weapon release, the connected power message disappears and it connects the battery and punctures 1 tank of that missile, which cools the gyro as it spins up for 5 seconds. Then a countdown timer starts in your HUD. Since 5 seconds was used already, you've got the remaining 25 seconds of the opened tank plus 30 seconds of the unopened tank, so 55 total. Coolant isn't shared between missiles, even on the same pylon, so if both the coolant tanks run out before you take a shot, that missile will never fire and your system will ignore it and show 1 less missile available. If you think you're not going to make the shot, before it pierces the second tank automatically at 30 seconds on the countdown, you can press reset. That scraps the remaining time on the open tank, but prevents the second one being spent. When you next press weapon release with the Igla selected, it'll puncture the last tank, spin up the gyro for 5 seconds, after which you get the timer giving you the last 25 seconds left on that tank to acquire the target and fire. So 1 set of 55 seconds or 2 sets of 25 seconds per missile. AA pylon selection also gives the Iglas the bore sight pipper up here. Get the target close to that circle and up close. I'm not going to list every known range, but suffice to say you can lock from about 6 kilometers from behind on a beefy heli without suppressors. Maybe half that if it's using suppressors. Maybe half that if it's from the front. And the sides are somewhere between frontal and rear arc. So a frontal on an Apache might only be 1.5 clicks or closer. But there's variability in that, even in the same circumstances. I'm unsure if higher or lower makes a difference with the suppressors that point up, but there's already variability in when it locks. I've read looking down on the target in front of ground clutter makes locks harder, but functionally I've not found that makes a difference on these Iglas. When you get the tone, you can hold weapon release again to shoot that missile. It's fire and forget, so you can turn away after launch if you want. While Iglas seem to ignore the fires from wrecks, they like the sun, so you have to avoid attacks in that direction, and they really love flares. And they don't turn on a dime, so you're going to have to use some dogfighting common sense in that if the missile has to turn 90 degrees to follow your target flying across your nose up close, it'll likely miss. Your best angle is up from the rear, where it should have a smooth pursuit pattern. Often the heat signature is way higher, and it seems the AI doesn't see the missile coming either and dump flares, even with things like the Apache where you'd expect the missile warnings to go off. Firing up close against players will limit the effectiveness of their missile warning systems and reaction times as well. It's also not a massive warhead. ED did announce a patch coming for its damage, and while it wasn't in the end January patch notes, Aria Gloria has pointed out the Lua files have changed numbers. And it seems like they might be slightly more effective than some of my older footage here shows. Slightly. What's not patched is the AI healers taking crazy amounts of damage. Stuff like the Mi-8's taking an AIM-120 straight to the engines, and it doesn't even bleed fluids or start smoking. And there's dozens of other horror stories about the damage they just shrug off. Either way, AI or player target, if you need something dead, I recommend after firing an Igla, you immediately weapon release to start cooling the next one for a follow-up shot. Note that burst settings does nothing for Iglas. You always cool and shoot them one by one. So at best maybe 6 seconds between missiles if you're quick. If you're using manual mode instead of automatic mode, select AA pylons, weapon release to start coolant, lock button to uncage the seeker, hold weapon release once you get tone. So the only difference from automatic mode is you won't get tone until you press lock after weapon release for cooling. It's one extra button press. And you don't have to wait for the cooling timer to press lock either. So just ingrain it in your muscle memory to press weapon release, then lock, and then weapon release to fire when ready. In automatic mode, you can't fire an Igla without turn. With manual mode, you can release without turn, so I was hoping you could lead with a perpendicular target, fire and have the missile acquire them on maybe an easier flight path. Doing this fires the missile low, but unfortunately, even if you pitch up to compensate for that drop, the missile never starts seeking, even if it scrapes their paint. So never fire without a tone, and really you'll only be using manual mode if you had it on to reduce restrictions on your other weapon systems. But it has no benefit doing this for Iglas. Now while AA weapon stations are selected, you can still slew the Schwal, but the lock button won't allow you to contrast lock something or laser range usually. You need to reset the Schwal or select other inner-outer pylons to do that. It will, however, keep locks and ranges you had before selecting the anti-air pylons, so you can lock something, go Iglas on a secondary target, gun select, and fire the cannon on the first target, if you wanted to. So, Iglas are neat, I guess. Maybe you can use them to spot things a little at night, but given the small detection zone, range, and time limits, it's not that useful for that purpose. Your bore sight is really high, which sucks if the target is co-altitude or even below you. That means you need to pitch down 5+ degrees, so watch that acceleration doesn't pull you into unsafe speeds. But if the target is above you, contrasted by the clear skies or a high flyer, that angle makes it convenient so you don't have to pitch back, like say versus jets. Iglas are convenient in that they're simple to use, and they can take out jets circling low and slow, though again the flares can mitigate your success. If something with decent air-to-air weaponry is hunting you, or even ATGMs, the odds are they significantly outrange you, so even your fire and forget ability is not that magical. So it's decent if you got the drop on someone up close. If they're equipped and headed straight at you with long range weapons, you're probably better off breaking away, or see, Iglas aren't the only tool available. Next few videos I'm taking you through the other weapon systems, and then some tactics to combine them. This is Volk. Cheers.